All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I'm delighted. I'm going to use the word overwhelmed. I am. I'm overwhelmed at the reception that I'm now receiving on this Wednesday. It is a glorious day to be alive. US of A, I'll be honest with you, got some problems.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
It is rough, baby. It is rough. So
that's not fake. That's real.
It is real rough. Yeah. So Albert is here.
Albert, thank you.
And so there is hope for all of us. With his mediocre work, he will drag us to the finish line. And Kim is here as well.
Kim, how are you?
And she was watching all events all morning and will continue to through the day. We are a live show. That is right. We are on live 11 to 1 on the West Coast and from 2 to 4 on the East Coast and across the world. We appreciate everyone joining us. I'm in Los Angeles and I've been in LA news for 35 years, which is scary to think about. I know, but I can give you some perspective on what's happening here and how the state of California is the focus of so much anger on the part of the President of the United States. He's getting the battle he wants with California in Gavin Newsom. We'll share some of the remarks of Gavin Newsom with you in a moment. And the winning political issue for Donald Trump is immigration, and he can make California the poster child for his immigration policy. He can get a fight with a high-end Democrat, Gavin Newsom, and he can stir the pot all at the same time. He can create a crisis in California with the heavy-handed ICE raids at Home Depot, at restaurants, in the fashion district. I mean, these people aren't people with criminal records, okay? But he gets all of that ripple effect, the community anxious, angry, and you get the pushback, and now you have the situation in Los Angeles, which we'll talk about, because it is truly a gateway to what is going to happen and can very easily happen elsewhere in the country. And already you're seeing protests against ICE policies in places like Texas. So you'll have to tell me, I mean, the border states are going to be most affected. There are already significant populations of Latinos there, and Latinos, honestly, have been most targeted in all of this. That's why they're going to those places I just mentioned. Can't see the chat. I'll tell you that even in Peru, they're like, what the F, says Spencer. Yeah. There was, that's right. I saw this. Yeah. Concord, which is in the Bay Area. They had ICE agents come to Concord yesterday. Concord, California. It's in the, it's like east of San Francisco, but just east of San Francisco. It's considered like a suburb of San Francisco. And so you see that the ICE policies and strategies are being employed heavy-handedly, I'd suggest, in California first, and then it will spread out across the country. And there's a tremendous amount of money that's been allocated to ICE, as you in the new budget. There is $27 billion that's been allocated toward enforcement and deportations. $27 billion. That'll include 10,000 new U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. And Trump's private prison donors will love this. The bill includes $45 billion to construct new migrant detention centers. That's a 364% increase over last year.
I thought we were just going to send them all to Gitmo.
And then there is that. There is the very real effort to retool Gitmo, to retool Guantanamo, this place where the worst of the worst were housed. Those involved in 9/11, those thought to be related to Al-Qaeda, to Osama bin Laden. I mean, Guantanamo became synonymous with American torture and lock them up and throw away the key, right? And now the Trump team plans to send thousands of migrants to Guantanamo starting as soon as this week. The idea is that you dramatically ramp up your anti-immigration efforts, on this administration very much doing that. And 9,000 people are being vetted for transfer to Guantanamo Bay, to the prison there.
Which
That
is
would be
supposed to be a notorious place that there's no access to medical care there. The treatment is not supposed to be good. And these are what did they do wrong?
Well, they were at Home Depot waiting for work, Kim.
They
That's
overstayed
what they did
their
wrong.
welcome. They didn't have papers.
There are 500 migrants who've been held for short periods already at Guantanamo. And that was the beginning, I think. This is why I think it's important to watch how things germinate, watch how things start. That's when I talk about LA. I think it's a far more obvious example. A lot of the dance that's being done in LA right now is a rehearsal for the dance that's going to be done in Texas, in New Mexico, in Arizona, et cetera, and across the country on the East Coast as well. I'm just mentioning the West because I think that's where it's really starting in earnest. But again, so there were 500 migrants held for short periods at the base since February. And the idea is that this Guantanamo-based prison will hold as many as 30,000 migrants. And the transfers could start as soon as today. The official reason for the transfers is to free up bed space at detention facilities on domestic American soil. But the use of what Kim, I think, accurately describes as a notorious facility, which has really housed terrorism suspects all these years, again sends another signal. It's a signal aimed at deterring illegal immigration to the U.S. A lot of this is messaging. So we'll see if this plan and strategy is implemented in any big way, but I mentioned to you the budgeting of the private prisons. I mean, they are scooping up a lot of people, but the reality is that they haven't scooped up the people they promised to scoop up. They've scooped up those who are really no threat to society, in fact, are just part of the underground economy that fuels America, that fuels the construction business, the restaurant business, the healthcare industry, the sanitation world. I mean, these are, I'm leaving out slaughterhouses in the agricultural fields. I mean, there's so many parts of the American economy and the California economy that will be critically affected by this and are critically affected even by the scare. But again, it's a winning political message that's implicit, which is I'm handling immigration, I'm handling it tough. That's a winning political issue for Trump and message for Trump. And as I say, it has these additional add-ons where he's taking on the enemy, California, the libs, Gavin Newsom, head lib. I'm going to get back to this in a second. I just wanted to mention something, kind of, oftentimes this happens. You get right into the
Mark Thompson Show.
Right into the body of the show, but I did want to acknowledge the passing of Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys genius. He was, what was he, 82, Kim?
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He really was a musical genius from everything I've read and understand about Brian Wilson. I mean, he was this innovator. He obviously caught the California good vibrations. This is interesting. Albert, could you name, besides good vibrations, could you name 3 Beach Boys songs?
Oh, yeah. Kokomo. Like, I love Kokomo.
Oh, there you go. All right. Yeah. Kokomo's more recent. Anything?
Yeah.
So you're on 1. How about 2 more? Oh yeah. Kokomo, of course. Kokomo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my
Kokomo's
song,
one.
yeah.
So you can't name Good Vibrations. You've named Kokomo.
The surfing USA, is that Good Vibrations?
Surfing USA.
Mhm.
Very, very good.
I'll have to dig deeper for the rest, but yeah.
Just think for a moment. It's not easy, although they were everywhere for so long. I keep
on thinking of the 2010 closer for the Giants, Brian Wilson also. But,
oh, yeah. There you go. That's right. No, I Get Around. I would have accepted that. Barbara Ann. Fun.
Oh,
Help me,
Barbara
Rhonda.
Ann, yeah, bro, yeah.
Surfing USA.
I just don't know the names, but if I heard it, I would
you know all
it.
the songs. I know, but it's just funny, the generational gap. But
When I was little, my dad used to sing me "Little Surfer Girl."
oh, that's sweet.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
really is sweet.
And we danced to that song at my wedding.
Oh my gosh, that is terrific.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, this has to really then hit in the McAllister house. Pet Sounds was the album that was breakthrough, apparently, and it's the album that, excuse me, the Rolling Stone magazine said it was the second best album of all time. And
That's what you want to be, is second best.
well, I mean, of all time, I'd take it, you
Yeah.
know. Brian Wilson said that he was inspired to write Pet Sounds after hearing the Beatles' Rubber Soul, which opened his eyes to what a fully formed album could be, he said. He said, if I ever do anything in my life, I'm going to make that good. I'll make that good an album like Rubber Soul. And so he did Pet Sounds. And in Paul McCartney's eyes, he did. Paul McCartney said that Pet Sounds repeatedly brought him tears throughout his life. And he counts one of the tracks on it, the simultaneously smoothing, I'm reading this for the cold reading this, soothing and complex God Only Knows, as his favorite song of all time. That's what Paul McCartney said. So Wilson, born in Inglewood, raised in Hawthorne, so a Southern California kid, and he was the oldest of three. All of them would become the Beach Boys. Brian was physically and emotionally abused by his father from a young age, apparently. He said, I had a good childhood, except for my dad beating me up all the time.
Oh, no.
His two brothers, Dennis and Carl, came to adopt the love of music in spite of the abuse. And Brian had near deafness in one ear. They learned to harmonize in the living room, eventually formed a band called the Pendletons, later renamed the Beach Boys. And Brian didn't know how to surf.
That's funny.
Even though they became so associated with that.
That surf culture, yeah.
Thus began a half-decade of Wilson's writing career in 1962 to 67. Brian was in his early 20s. Beach Boys released 13 albums in total. Massive success, but the lifestyle really took its toll on Wilson. He suffered a nervous breakdown. It was kind of celebrated and written about. That was in touring during the year of 1964. He married his first wife, Marilyn, would go on to struggle with both drug and alcohol abuse. He had a schizophrenic disorder, manic depressive with auditory hallucinations.
Oh.
I mean, he had a lot of problems mentally. In fact, as I recall, his mental illness became something that was written about and reported on, and he had a therapist who he trusted, and it was suggested by the family the therapist was kind of insinuating himself on Brian Wilson's life, and that, you know, was getting too close to Brian Wilson. It was suggested maybe there was a money motivation, that sort of thing. But he was in trouble in the 70s. Weight ballooned to more than 300 pounds, struggled with addiction, became a recluse. And again, he, I guess, found a way out. Maybe this therapist helped him, you know. The therapist employed a controversial 24-hour therapy regimen that got Wilson off drugs but made him utterly dependent on the therapist, is what is suggested here. Eventually, Wilson's family had to sue the therapist in the early 1990s to get a restraining order against the psychologist. The psychologist subsequently handed over his license. In the 34 years since the legal separation from the therapist, Wilson's general condition improved. He got married in 1994, father to 7 children. Carney and Wendy of Wilson Phillips came from the first marriage. And he released a series of solo albums over the years. And in 2004, he finally unveiled Smile to an audience and critical acclaim. That year, while talking with Larry King, Wilson described his life as a happy life. He says, I've got a happy life. I'm not as depressed as I was. I get depressed now and then, but not very much anymore.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Despite suffering from lifelong stage fright, he started to tour once again, and apparently his harmonies were perfect.
Yeah.
Brian Wilson passes away at 82. Albert could name 2 of his songs. But Albert is like 11 years old, so
Yeah.
I really do give him a pass on that, you know. I must tell you, though, if I had to wager, well, betting against Albert is never a bad wager. But I would have said, because Albert is musical. He has a lot of ties to music. Usually on music stuff, he's pretty strong. Might have put it at like 70-30 that he might be able to. And he, I think he probably could have come up with 2, but 3 was just too.
Song titles, yes. If you played the songs for me, I would definitely recognize them.
No, but if I played the songs for you, could you tell me the title of the song?
Oh, probably not. But
Yeah,
I do know the songs.
Yeah. Music probably literally saved Brian's life, given his horrific upbringing, says CC Ryder. Music is therapeutic. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? 82 seems to be the age, says Mindy. Wow, that's scary.
I mean, all of us raised in California, you know, the women in the crowd, we all loved Wish They All Could Be California Girls.
Oh, that's such a great song. Thank you.
That was our mantra.
And we would play some of these songs for you, even a little bit of it, but you know we can't play anything for you without being demonetized for the day. So all I'll do is cheers to Brian Wilson's memory and all the great things he did. As I have a sip of CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, the place to get coffee, spices, tea. It's a boutique roastery. So everything's hand-picked, hand-roasted. This tremendous care is taken in giving you a great taste experience. So that's why I want you to go there, pick out the items that are best for you. They're tasting notes on everything. It's a wonderful place run by wonderful people who are delightful partners here. And we do, again,
Louise's order is in process.
Louise says, made my first order with Coachella Valley Coffee this week. Wow. Use the discount code Mark T. Should get by Friday.
Nice.
This shipment. Can't wait to try it. Yeah, good for you, Louise. You will be happy. I promise. R.I.P. Brian Wilson. Glad we could at least recognize his work and his importance to music. Sausalito Steve, in memory of Brian Wilson, with a $25 super chat. Wow. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you so much.
That's really nice. Beyond nice. Lucy McAllister, my favorite McAllister. The only McAllister who doesn't read news, apparently, but also reads the room and can rock it with a $20 super sticker. Thank you. And a big shout out to Lucy.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Does Coachella Valley Coffee have whiskey? Asks Bald Thanos. Not yet. Get on the line. Maybe happening.
They do have some spices. I haven't tried their spices yet.
Yeah. Not into the whiskey, but you never know. Maybe you could start a whiskey company, and we could advertise it here on the show. Just a thought. Another classic Mark Thompson time waster. It does feel time wasty, to be honest, right now.
This is a classic Mark Thompson time waster.
All right. So I think with that said, I do want to get to our top.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, if you would please queue up a couple of things, and then I'll bring on Brother Rothmann here in just a few minutes. What's happening in California is, as I say, the fight that Trump wants. It's around an issue that's a political winner for him, immigration. And it's against the high-profile libs that he wants to take on. You know, the libs who can't run California, can't run LA, can't run San Francisco. So the red-blue, and then the actual granular fact that it's Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and these sorts of people involved only is something that delights Trump. So he comes in heavy with ICE agents, and he begins this process of making California an example. Here is the California governor, Gavin Newsom, who addressed the state last night.
What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken. Families separated. Friends, quite literally, disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive.
You get the idea. And look, I'm not a huge Gavin Newsom fan, although I think there are a lot of things about Gavin Newsom that are really attractive, and I will leave those for another time. I agree with him on what's happened here, although I would say that and this is just a little aside, if I can, again, step out of the movie for just a second. I'm pretty tough on law and order, and I feel as though peaceful protesters were really committed to what was generally peaceful protest. But there were agitators in there. I don't even know that they were part of the protest. I mean, there seems to be a lot of reporting that would suggest that they weren't part of the protest. They might have been paid agitators. They might have been anarchists. I don't know that it's informed by any kind of political philosophy. I think a lot of these people just go in. They love mayhem. They love throwing stuff at the cops. They don't like the cops anyway. They don't feel connected to society in any way. They don't feel like they have a stake in their city. And so you end up with these horrifying scenes of cinder blocks being thrown, and police cars being vandalized, and Waymos being set ablaze, along with police cars and even news vans. Those people have to be dealt with incredibly harshly, in my view. And I also feel that the governor in those comments, and then I'll get back to the main, but I do want to make this clear, because I really part company with allowing in any way the kind of looting, any sort of loose grip on protesting that becomes embedded with those who are looting. I'll include tagging. I include all of this stuff. I arrest all those people, looters, taggers, stone throwers, all of them. If you spit at cops, again, you may take away my lib credentials, but this really, as a citizen of the United States and a taxpayer in Los Angeles, I don't want you trashing a business down there. I don't want you trashing the city. And as I said, they're not trashing the city. It's a 4-block radius, but they are trashing areas down there, and there was looting. And as I say, I want real crackdown on that. Why do business owners have to deal with this repeatedly? If I'm a business owner in downtown LA, why do I have to factor in that, oh yeah, every time there's a protest, the looters are going to get to my store, they're going to break the window, they're going to steal everything from jewelry to iPhones. It's BS. If you want businesses to open up in these areas that need businesses to open up, you need to deal with looters, taggers, stone throwers, flamethrowers, those who arsonists. You need to deal with them harshly. So I part company with some in charge who I think have sort of been a little looser on allowing protests to get a little over the edge. Now let me get back to the movie. But the idea somehow that you needed the President of the United States to Bigfoot the governor and local officials, that's just ludicrous. That is obviously an effort to make this a political battle. It served no useful end. And could Newsom have just ordered the California National Guard to ignore the order from Trump? Comes Randy. I don't think so.
I think Trump federalized the National Guard, and that means they report to Trump instead of Newsom at that point.
Yeah. But as Vicky says, Mark, yes, the criminals are bad, but let's focus on the fact that we're losing our democracy. I do think like that's the main point. You cannot detain these people without due process. You cannot just scoop people up randomly the way they're being scooped up. In large measure, we see illegal immigration pursued in a less than legal way. There may be illegality on both sides. What's the next video you have for me before I get to Brother Rothmann? This is Donald Trump being asked about the very thing that was commented on in the chat, which is associated with the governor of California being spoken with prior to this nationalizing of the Guard, the deployment of the Guard by the President of the United States over the protestations, over the resistance of the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles. Did he talk to Governor Newsom ahead of time? Here's what he said.
Hey, Mr. President, when is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom?
A day ago. Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last time we gave him a little additional help, you would have, Los Angeles would be burning right now. Los Angeles would be not a lot different than what you saw take place in California and Los Angeles just a little while ago. And, you know, you got to remember, we have the Olympics coming. And we don't want people looking at Los Angeles like it was, like it would have been. It would have been bad. Last night, they had total control. If we didn't have the military in there, the National Guard, and then we also sent in some Marines. We had some bad people. We have people, they look in your face and they spit right in your face. They're animals. And these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They're agitators. They're paid. Do you think somebody walks up to a curb and starts hammering pieces out, has all the equipment necessary, and starts handing it out to people to use as a weapon? These are paid insurrectionists or agitators or troublemakers. You can call it whatever you want. And we ended it, and we have in custody some very bad people, some very bad people.
Mr. President.
Did you see the guy throwing the rocks at the police cars as they went by and crushing their windows and endangering our police? We're not going to let that happen, yeah.
Pardon me, Mr. President, on those Marines, Governor Newsom has described them as political pawns. I'm curious for your reaction to that and what you see as the Marines' role and what are their rules of engagement?
All I want is safety. I just want a safe area. We have, Los Angeles was under siege until we got there. The police were unable to handle it. You can speak to the chief. He said it on television 3 nights ago. He said, this is more than we can handle. They said that. And the LA police, I know a lot of the police in LA, they're good, they're great people, but they're given instructions not to do this, not to do that. But in this case, they were trying their best. They were not able to handle it. It was out of control. When we got there, and you have to remember, I've been here before, and I went right by every rule, and I waited for governors to say, send in the National Guard. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it, and they just wouldn't do it. It kept going on and on, got worse and worse. And in Minneapolis, that city was burning down 7 days, and I said, I don't care. The governor, who's a governor that just happened to be running for vice president, a total, you talk about an incompetent governor, he's an incompetent person. That he was picked, well, I was actually very happy he was picked for other reasons. But this guy wouldn't call the National Guard. And we ultimately just sent in the National Guard. We stopped it. But that was after 7 days. And I said to myself, if that stuff happens again, we've got to make faster decisions because they don't want to do it. The radical left, it's usually radical left, and it's usually governors that are Democrat, and they don't want to call them in. They don't want to save lives. They don't want to save property. They don't want to call them in. I don't know what it is. We sent them in, not early, we sent them in late as far as I'm concerned. But big problems, as you know, 3 nights ago, big problems were ensuing. If we didn't send in the National Guard quickly, right now, Los Angeles would be burning to the ground.
Yeah, there really is no evidence that is at all true. Most of what he said, he's kind of spun up. I've just told you that I thought that the way in which looters are being handled and crowd is being handled, and again, the crowd and the looters, it really I think, generally speaking, are distinctly different. There are those who are out for the joyride of mayhem, and then there are those largely, I mean, 99% of the crowd is just marching peacefully. Unfortunately, the 1% can create a lot of issues and can create a lot of real disturbing images. We talked about them yesterday. So Trump gets a lot of political bang off of the scenes in Los Angeles now. But the constitutionality, the legality of all of this has to be part of the conversation, because the minute you permit, for whatever reason, the president to Bigfoot the governor and the mayor, you have opened the door to a kind of autocracy that can be reasonably referenced in all of this. I mean, we hear about states' rights when the Republicans are talking about freedom. We played you the Kristi Noem conversation where she talks about states' rights. She was talking about it with Sean Hannity. Played that yesterday. But apparently it's perfectly cool when you're going after the libs to Bigfoot them from the White House the way he did. Last thing is Caroline Leavitt, and then I'll get to Jon Rothmann. Here's Caroline Leavitt, the spokesperson for the White House, appearing with Maria Bartiromo on Fox.
Washington Post reported after speaking with Steve Bannon that Elon Musk aggressively body-checked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in the White House. We're all trying to figure out what happened here and how come this got to this level.
Thing.
What happened? Yeah. Did he body check the Treasury Secretary in the White House?
Well, look, when this story originally broke, I said from the podium that there have definitely been healthy disagreements amongst the cabinet and Elon Musk. There were times in which they got frustrated with one another, but I think that really speaks to the heart of this cabinet and the president's team, that they can have these robust disagreements and then still come together to do what's right for the people they are serving. And you saw when President Trump graciously sent Elon Musk back to his companies, Secretary Bessent was there in the Oval Office, along with Secretary Lutnick and Stephen Miller. I was there. The chief of staff was there. And we were all hoping for the best for Elon. And I think it's unfortunate that now that he's gone back to his companies, he is lambasting this bill that he was very much supportive of by all accounts. I mean, he never spoke out against it until he went back to his companies. And that's okay. He has a right to speak for his companies. But
this is just the point that she never denies that confrontation happened. No. Who I really wanted to hear from was Tom Homan, because he talks about the immigration, and then we'll button out the immigration and we'll let Rothmann discuss it. Yeah. But this is Tom Homan on NBC Nightly News. Go ahead.
From what you've seen, from what you've heard in Los Angeles, could you conduct ICE raids right now without the help of the National Guard and the Marines?
We can conduct ICE raids, but it's about the threats and the violence right now. I mean, this job's already dangerous. I've done this for a long time. I mean, our ICE officers have been attacked. It's like we're a third world nation where people think it's okay to threaten the life and safety of federal law enforcement officers and their families.
I want to put up a tweet for you. This is what Governor Newsom put on X, right? He put the photos you see there of Marines sleeping on top of each other. This is what he wrote in that post. You sent your troops here without fuel, food, water, or a place to sleep. Here they are being forced to sleep on the floor, piled on top of one another. What do you say to that, Mr. Homan?
I'd say I ought to take a few moments, go downtown L.A. and look at the damage been done by these radical protesters. I mean, President Trump's saving his city. President Trump's doing what he should have done. Gavin Newsom could have responded right away. And everybody wants to put the blame on President Trump and the National Guard. You know the blame starts? It starts with the Biden administration, with over 10 million illegal aliens across this border. We're out there trying to respond to the chaos he created.
Yeah, the chaos in L.A. You know, really, I'll tell you, last week, I just couldn't get over the chaos. Yeah, the people selling fruit on the street corners once in a while. I mean, that's chaotic. This guy, Pedro, that I know, he does a little cooking stand, makes tacos down at the corner about a mile from where I live. It's chaotic. It's got her chaos. Chaos in Los Angeles? Please. This is a bald-faced lie. Or is it bold-faced lie? What is it, Kim? Is it bold or bald? Let's bring on Rothmann. What do you think it is?
Bald.
It's bald-faced lie? Okay. Kim would know. She's our resident chitter. All right. That's a little bit around the horn, what people are saying. I started with the governor. I gave you the Trump response. I mean, the Trump response about, by the way, the call appears to be fabricated. There was no conversation with Governor Newsom prior to the deployment of the National Guard. In fact, according to Newsom, they spoke. It was on, I think it was Friday, he said. They spoke and never even discussed the National Guard or what was going on. They were talking about other things. So, again, somebody's not telling the truth here. And supposedly, Trump was referring on Sunday in that conversation to a conversation that didn't exist on the prior day. So that's an overall view of things. For some analysis and conversation around what's happening in California. And then I will get to Texas, too, because the National Guard has been called in by the governor of Texas to put down protests around ICE raids in that state. We'll talk about that with our colleague, Jon Rothmann.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy's a lecturer, historian, author, and our former colleague from KGO Radio in the Bay Area. How about Jon Rothmann, everyone? Yeah. Jon, give me some thoughts on what's happening with California, and if you could, through the lens of, I think, the legal issues here, as well as the constitutional issues, which I believe you're quite familiar with.
On Thursday, Judge Charles Breyer will hear the question of the California legal suit. I want to point something out that most people are not aware of. Judge Breyer served on Archibald Cox's Watergate team. He's been around for a while. He has a great sensitivity to the presidency. And I'm glad that Judge Breyer is the one who's going to do the review. But understand, all this talk about immigration, all this talk about all this stuff, Mark, the real issue is Donald Trump. We are in this position because of Donald Trump. And unless people wake up and understand that our democracy really is at stake, I think we're missing something very, very important.
I have to say that I think this conversation about the democracy at stake, while obviously significant, you could say it's the front and center issue, I think, which is sort of what you've just said. It feels amorphous. It feels kind of like, a little hard to get your arms around.
Not if you think about Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Not if you understand the abuses of presidential power. If I can put on my hat as a presidential historian, which is generally what I'm interviewed about by people, and what I talk about on my podcast, this is such an abuse of power. It is almost beyond comprehension. The tragedy in all of this is the Republican Party with its complete silence. And may I say, if this were Joe Biden or Barack Obama, the Republicans would be up in arms. We have to rely on one thing and one thing alone for the next few months, and that is the courts. The Supreme Court is going to be critical, and I've said it before on your podcast, and I will say it again. Chief Justice Roberts is going to be critical in all of this. Amy Coney Barrett is going to be critical in all of this. And if I am right, that is the boy with the finger in the dike. They're the ones that are going to have to do it. Otherwise, we'll have to wait for an election. And Donald Trump, frankly, doesn't care about the election results. He's making that clear every single day. I have never seen a presidency more out of control. So we can talk about immigration, and you can listen to Tom Holman and the others saying it's all Joe Biden's fault. Nonsense. The action that is taking place now is the responsibility of Donald J. Trump, and he should be held accountable by history without any doubt.
The raids are really being done in a heavy-handed way. I suppose that is designed to send a message, right? I think it does two things.
That's what an authoritarian regime does.
Yeah. You're saying it scares the populace into being cowed by the authority.
Sure, it scares me. How do you think people who are of Spanish heritage, Mexican heritage, are walking down the street? People ask me, what should we be doing? I said, carry your papers with you. Not that it will help you, given the climate that the ICE people are promoting, which, by the way, is not the fault of ICE. It is the fault of Donald Trump. It is the fault of Kristi Noem. It is the fault of the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. It is the fault of an administration which has no regard for law. And it's a very simple fact. And it's very disturbing to me, Mark, because if they can do it to them, they can do it to us. And I think that is the important element which needs to be considered. Al Gore was here in San Francisco, and I put it up on my Facebook page, and he gave a talk, and he was fiery as all get out. And he said, this is an attack on democracy. And we better understand that as democracy is eroded by Donald Trump, we all feel that impact. By the way, I could not allow this opportunity to pass without talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who made a pledge when he testified before his confirmation hearing about holding on to the vaccine board dealing with the question of vaccines. 17 people were fired. And you know what he's going to do now? He's going to put his own people in there who don't believe in vaccines. Do you understand? This is a question of public health. By the way, democracy is a question of public health. And if part of my problem when I do this every day, either giving speeches or being interviewed or appearing with you or doing my podcast, is there is so much. It is so overwhelming that to narrow it down, to really get people to focus, is a very difficult thing to do. So
Well, I think you've got incompetence at the highest levels of government. You just mentioned one of those things, RFK Jr. And
but it's not incompetence; it's deliberate action. They have an ideology, and that is a deliberate process.
Their ideology is built around incompetence, sir. They have no knowledge of the topics that they are meaning public health. In this case, public health. In the case of Kristi Noem, because it's not limited to RFK Jr. I'm glad that you mentioned RFK Jr. We talked about the story yesterday. It's insane. It's absolutely insane, as you said. I mean, the vaccine board gives the most rigorous review of these vaccines possible. So if you ever wanted an intense scrutiny of a vaccine and its effects, you want that vaccine review board. Now, go ahead.
We haven't even talked about Ukraine and what the Russians are doing now to the Ukrainians. It's appalling with high technology. Do you hear anybody raising an objection? And you know the problem is, Mark? We don't have time. When you and I had a 4-hour, well, we did 2. When I had a 4 or a 5-hour program, I could deal with so many issues. But now we are limited, and Donald Trump is taking advantage of that. This is a really important thing to understand. We can talk about a million issues, but the reason these things are happening is because of Donald Trump. And unless we understand that and realize what he's doing, we miss the important point.
Now, I want to touch on Texas just because the governor of Texas has brought in the National Guard to keep the peace, okay? It's not even that he's responding to any kind of a serious situation yet. Protesters held a peaceful demonstration in downtown San Antonio on Sunday. The demonstration followed ICE arrests of immigrants who showed up for appearances in the San Antonio Immigration Court. This is another thing that they're doing, John. These are prescribed appearances at courts on the part of these immigrants who are trying to attain legal status as asylees, as fearing violence and fleeing these countries that they can't inhabit anymore. And they're going to their assigned court date. When they get there, ICE agents arrest them, and their court date is canceled. They are now processed as arrestees.
And they're talking about sending people now to Guantanamo.
And deportation.
30,000 people can be housed in Guantanamo. Do you understand? This is a complete abrogation of American democracy, of our rights, my rights, your rights. And unless we wake up and get the Republicans to wake up, there is a check on the president, and that would be the Congress of the United States. And of course, what is going to happen in Judge Breyer's courtroom to the California lawsuit is going to be critical.
Well, there's a check on the president of the United States already, isn't there, John? The law. Play a little bit for Brother Rothmann. Play a little bit of Kristi Noem talking to Sean Hannity about overreach on the part of the president. This is when Biden was president. This is right before the Trump administration came into power. Go ahead, Albert.
They're there at the direction of the president in order to keep peace and allow people to be able to protest, but also to keep law and order. That is incredibly important to the president. He recognizes he was elected to make sure that every single person in this country was treated exactly the same and that we would enforce the laws.
No, that's
And
not
of course,
the cut.
it's
That's not the cut I
poppycock.
want. That's not the cut I wanted. Sean Hannity speaking with Kristi Noem, and she talks about states' rights and how Biden
Overreached.
Yeah, overreached. Obviously, now she says things along the lines of what we've just heard, which are associated with, hey, somebody's got to keep the peace, and that's what the president is doing. So Trump gets a pass. But I was saying this before, John, and I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that the immigration conversation is a winner for him. It's a political winner.
Of course.
So people don't see it as the beginning of what you're talking about, the loss of democracy or the loss of due process. They don't see it as an illegality that serves anything but a noble means. In other words,
Until
they
are affected by these actions.
Right.
And ultimately, I believe this administration's policies, Donald Trump's policies, will be brought down by his own hubris. I think people, once they're affected personally, will feel it. And that's what I'm hoping the American people will wake up to understand, and the Republicans. So, this is a tragedy unfolding before our eyes. I just reread Sinclair Lewis's book, It Can't Happen Here. And the tragedy is, it appears to me, and by the way, this is in defense of you, Mark Thompson, because I've been a great believer in the system. The system would offer the checks and balances. I have to tell you, I hope it will, but I believe the system has failed dramatically, and you have pointed that out repeatedly, and I regret to say that you were correct.
I've pointed out two things, that the systems and institutions of America are not something that you can have blind faith in or even general faith in at all. They're made up of people, all of these institutions. But the other thing does relate to people. I don't have faith in the American people. I don't have the faith that you have expressed before. I think people call me a pessimist, but I think I'm a realist. And the American people let us down in the last election, and they continue to let us down now. They go for the shiny object. This guy's good. Trump is very good. His people keep hammering these issues, and they have probably the biggest megaphone in Fox News Channel. And most of the major influencers are right-wing influencers. And so these are very hard headwinds to
you're right,
to fight
against.
against.
Let me point out, this Saturday, there will be, for the first time in American history, a military parade in Washington, D.C., which is going to cost us a fortune in a time when we should be talking about economy, which many in the military oppose. They believe this to be the wrong thing to do. And Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican president, a five-star general, said these kinds of military parades have no place in the America that we have. He said, you want to see that? Go to Red Square. The simple truth is that these abuses of power are taking place on a quantum leap. And you grew up in Washington, Mark. You know the streets of Washington are not equipped for this kind of weight that's going to be going across it.
Well, he's already he tore up the streets of Washington the first time. Remember, they had a version of this in Trump season 1 when he first 4 years wanted this and got it. And now you'll get all of this again, but you'll get it even bigger. And
Albert's putting up what's going to happen.
6,500 troops, 150 vehicles. I mean, it's
and the air power that's being used. And it's, by the way, Donald Trump's 79th birthday. What a way to celebrate. But the fact that there are no controls, he's spending this money, millions and millions of dollars without any condition, it is so disturbing to me. And again, I say it, and I know you understand this, the silence of the Republican Party. I expect when this is all said and done, when the Trump administration is over, the Republicans are going to face the wrath of the American people, and deservedly so. I think if Dwight Eisenhower were alive today, he'd be rolling over in his grave.
Well, if he were alive, he would not be in his grave, so he couldn't roll over. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I'm glad, because
not
a
the
little
most
levity,
ridiculous.
levity in this time of
I
tragedy.
see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you. So this is interesting. Rev P says after that parade, those tanks will be trained to blue states to keep order. Yeah. The there's a poll of veterans, apparently, Karen Cooper says, that indicates 70% didn't like the idea of a parade. It is very North Korea to have this kind of review stand with all of the troops and
or Red Square. I remember the marches in Red Square. I mean, do we all understand how antithetical, by the way, that's a ding word,
Yes,
how
it is.
antithetical this is to our American traditions? It is, but again, it is the silence of the Congress. The fact that the Congress is not speaking out is something which gives a green light to Donald Trump for these excesses. And by the way, you note in the terms of Robert Kennedy Jr. that we have members of the Senate who voted for his confirmation. He was approved by one vote, who voted for his confirmation because he made a promise about not doing just what he's doing. And now what happens? He does it and there's no consequence. There's no exposure. And this is, again, an illustration of a real problem that we have to deal with.
You know, I'm so glad this came up in the chat because I'm going to pose this to Brother Rothman. Rich says the latest survey released June 9th found 45% of voters approve of Donald Trump's job performance. That's from Forbes. I wanted to mention this, and I'm so glad for that comment, because while we're in what would seem to be a five-alarm fire, there are those that, again, this politics of targeting immigrants is very effective in keeping in the fold. And you can just see 45%. Basically, his support hasn't moved at all, John, despite all of this overreach.
You are absolutely correct.
100%.
But I would remind you, the same thing applied to Richard Nixon. Even in the darkest days of Watergate, Nixon had an approval rating that was above water. So what you have to hope, at least this is my own expression now, is that there will be a reckoning when the American people understand. And they will ultimately understand. The only question is, how much damage will Donald Trump do? And not only Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. It's to me absolutely unbelievable that this guy is in the position he is running the Defense Department. And the general conclusion of people I know in the department is that it's a disaster. So I don't know how you wake people up, but eventually we will. Elon Musk is a great example of what's going on because he became disillusioned. It's Elon Musk who used the I word, impeachment. Now he's backing down. And somebody said to me, why do you think he's backing down? Look at all the federal contracts he has, which we were told was not a conflict of interest when he used that heavy-handed tactic. And so these are all issues. And I noticed the caption deportation protests spread across America. Do you think they're spreading now? Wait until real deportations start taking place in other major American cities. And then we will really have a crisis. By the way, I'm not a particular fan of Gavin Newsom on many levels, but I thought last night he spoke truth to power. And one of the things that the American people will expect of the Democrats is to do just that. And recognizing, as you have pointed out, and properly so, that the right-wing media supports Donald Trump no matter what. Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, they're just in lockstep. But that also goes to the heart of our problem with media. I was reflecting just the other day, the tragedy of there being no KGO in San Francisco. The fact that there is no talk radio where one can really discuss these issues in great depth and where there can be feedback and argument and rebuttal is another blow to American democracy. And you and I remember the days when the FCC would never have permitted the kind of monopoly that has now seized our public airwaves. This is something else. But how many items can you list, Mark? How much geschrying, if you will? How much speaking out can you do? And my answer is, as long as I have a voice, I'm going to speak out about these things.
Well, it is quite a laundry list of things that you mentioned. I'll just go back to the parade. The parade, as we've said, is a very old school Eastern Bloc, North Korean, Chinese sort of thing that we've seen where you see the despot head of state standing on the review stand as the military and all its might goes by. One of the things that's been, I think, historically, I'd say this is a post-World War II thing, better about this country is that we did, if you will, walk softly and carry a big stick. Now, I could have a conversation about how softly we walked, all right? But my point is, we didn't peacock about how strong we were militarily. I think part of that was, to be honest, going all the way to the end of World War II associated with the atom bomb. I mean, I think there was a reality about, you know, the might of America and maybe the complicated might that these nuclear weapons actually provide that made us a little less peacocky about this stuff. Still, and I'll just quickly say, it always is disquieting to me. It's always bothersome to me when we do the stealth flyovers. It's also magnificent. I know it's quite awesome when you see these Blue Angels in flight or the stealth aircraft in flight. But when I see all of them at the beginning of NFL games and I see everybody in camo, et cetera, I see a fetishizing of the military that really is not what the military is about. The military is about proud service. I have a great regard for everyone who's involved in the military. I have great regard for the history of the military, for the rules that these military heads have to abide by, the constitutional provisions by which they are limited. And the idea somehow that we just put it all on display this way, I think the other secret that we now all know is a lot of this stuff, these weapon systems, end up being a colossal waste of taxpayer money. Most of that money doesn't leave the Beltway. These are huge weapons, nothing to do with the men and women who serve honorably. It has to do with defense contractors who can ply their wares and lobby in Washington and get incredibly sickening, gross contracts that never have any effect on our security and our defense. So when I see the big parade, I think of all of these things that I've just mentioned.
Well, you will note, where did Donald Trump deliver the most terrifying address this week? At Fort Bragg. And if you listen to the words of Donald Trump in front of troops where you're not supposed to deliver a political speech, you're not supposed to do that. Patriotic, yes, but a partisan speech has no place in front of U.S. military. But it's Fort Bragg, and it's what this president did. If General Milley were still chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I think Trump would have been stopped from this parade and much of the other stuff he's doing. And let me point out to you that Donald Trump had a meeting at Camp David this week. I don't know exactly the result of it, but it was to deal with these questions, and he summoned the generals and the admirals. What did he tell them? Why don't we know? And what does it mean in terms of America's might and how it's used? This is something that I have to ask your forgiveness, Mark. Here I'm raising all of these issues because this is my therapy session. It is the only way I know with our listeners, many of whom were at KGO, to explain the angst that we feel. And it is a sense of impotence. And that is the worst feeling imaginable. When you see the problem, when you can identify the problem. I'll never forget my father, who was a doctor, would come home from the office sometimes, and he'd sit in a big red leather chair, and he looked so sad. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Johnny, I can diagnose the problem, but I can't cure it." And what I find frustrating is talking about what Donald Trump is doing on every level of government. We can diagnose it, but we don't have a cure for it. And that, I think, is the building frustration that so many of us feel.
I think that's very well said, actually. And I also like the idea that I can call you Johnny, which is what I'd like to, begin calling you. I saw a comment that I thought was pretty good from Rain. I wish I could see, I'm sure there are a lot of good comments. I just see one once in a while. Rain says, the military parade sends out a very threatening message to the world, including our allies. That's kind of what you were just saying, Johnny.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. We expect from a president of the United States to conduct himself in such a way as to convey to the world our positive sense. The idea that we have a president now who is so unbalanced, and I use that term advisedly, You can see it in his policy on tariffs. We haven't even talked about the so-called deal with China and how it's going to impact our country.
You're talking about the just completed trade deal.
Yeah, it's not. It's not formalized. It is simply a proposal.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of, you're right. It's not formalized. It's advertised, which is kind of the way they do everything, right? You know, if they have a phone call with China, they go, "Hey, we got a deal. It's great. China and I are talking, and we're coming close to a deal. We'll have one within the next 48 hours."
He's talking to Putin too, and look what Putin is doing. I mean, all of you should understand what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Kiev right now, with these attacks that are random attacks. And where is Donald Trump in all of this? Not a word. And so this is something that we need to consider. It's why I began my discussion with you today, that the issue here is not immigration. The issue here is not even a military parade. The issue here is not what is happening in the Department of Health and Human Services. The issue is the President of the United States. And those of you who have listened to me all these years on KGO and in other forums, and I've been saying this for years, more than 3 decades, it matters who is President of the United States. And clearly, we are going to have to deal with Donald Trump and his abuse of presidential power. We are going to watch carefully. And I think what happens in Judge Breyer's courtroom on Thursday, tomorrow, is going to be a fascinating development. And then all of our attention must focus on the Supreme Court. How far will the Supreme Court allow Donald Trump to go? Because he's being challenged on every level.
The court is the only thing between the people and the president right now. I mean, I think the only protection is in the courts.
And by the way, you know what the Republicans are talking about doing? They're pointing out, and this is just unbelievable to me, the district courts do not exist constitutionally. They were created. And now what Donald Trump and some of the Republican leaders in Congress, including the Speaker of the House, are recommending is the abolition of the district court system. It is beyond measure. I worked for Richard Nixon. I saw abuses. I've never seen or contemplated this. And I said before, and I'll say it again, when Sinclair Lewis wrote his book in 1936, "It Can't Happen Here." If Sinclair Lewis were alive, he would be saying it is happening right now. And unless we are aware, unless we take action, either through the courts or through the electoral process, we are going to have severe issues in the days ahead. Thank God you're here, Mark. And I want to encourage everybody to contribute to the Mark Thompson program. Keep it alive. I only wish, Mark, that you and I had a 50,000 watt radio station that we could broadcast from dealing with this. And somebody asked me, if you had it, how many hours would you be willing to work? And I said, I'd work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's very frustrating for us and for the American people not to have that vehicle. So,
well, I'm ready to put in, if you get that radio station, I'm ready to put in 2 hours, everybody. That's it. So John can do the other 22. Seriously, of course, it's hard to see so much of the broadcast world go over to right-wing media. And it's also just difficult to see so much independent media crushed. You know, I'll just be honest with you, here on the YouTube platform, which is where we start, and then we're out as an audio podcast across Spotify and iTunes and iHeartRadio. There is a playing down, though, in the algorithm of YouTube of a lot of the voices like mine. It's independent media is still in control and being in control. You know, you're working for the man. I mean, I just know, in other words, as the political winds get to be too tough for the YouTube crew, they play down things that are talked about here on YouTube. And that's why many go to other independent forums. But I think it is frustrating. The media environment is frustrating. There's no question about it.
And it hurts democracy. It hurts our ability to have expression. You and I, Mark, have been part of the media world for decades. And what I am seeing now is, it saddens me beyond words. May I make one other comment? We were talking about the George Clooney production, which was aired on CNN. And I'm a big fan of Edward R. Murrow's. And one night on KGO.
That was the Good Night and Good Luck. Yeah.
Yep. One night on KGO, with the permission of Casey Murrow, Edward R. Murrow's son, we did a 4-hour special. And Casey gave me unrestricted access to all of the material that we were able to use. And that was a show worth listening to again and again and again. And the simple fact is, and I couldn't help reflecting, people ask me, who does Donald Trump remind you of? Joe McCarthy. Except there is no Senate control. Remember that in December of 1954, the United States Senate voted to condemn Joe McCarthy. And it was only 22 Republicans held out. And I can only say to you, I wish to God that we had the ability to do that today. The greatest.
But you're saying you don't have a Senate, and you have no one really acting, no group,
and it's Joe McCarthy.
No person in power, that is to say, GOP power, to restrain the impulses of this president.
That's right.
I want to just in closing, I kind of have a meta thought I want to run by you, and I think it's kind of significant. And to be fair, it was suggested either in our chat or someone emailed me about this. Our email is themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com, just as an aside. It was suggested that there is a normalization that's going on. It's part of a plan. The deployment of the National Guard, the deployment of the Marines, the deployment of military in American cities. It's part of a normalization that the president and his henchmen are trying to get to, so that we'll become accustomed and not shocked by the presence of these military troops in so many of our cities and towns. And so, this is the hypothetical part. Later in the movie, when an election rolls around, you have this presence to maintain order. And we know it has the effect of suppressing a vote. When you put all of those cops everywhere, you put all of these people out there on the street, it creates actually an impression of maybe a town, maybe a city that is teetering. And people just don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to vote. And worse, they're scared about being falsely arrested, incarcerated, etc. I wonder if you could speak to the normalization plan as part of the blueprint that the GOP has to retain power.
First of all, I want to commend you because you're absolutely right. General Milley, you will recall, following January 6th, said he would not allow the military to be used for that purpose. And I would remind you that Donald Trump would like General Milley to re-enlist or be re-enlisted so he can court-martial him. No, you're absolutely right. There is a normalization here. And this is abnormal. This is not America. This is not the America that you and I have grown up in. And unless we seize the initiative, we're in big trouble. May I say to all of those who are listening, if we could get the ability, Mark, myself, and others, to go back on the air and do this debate, we would be so grateful. And the fact that those forums don't exist means we're limited to this. So let me close, because I know you're going to throw me out in a moment. You know, he's unyielding in his limiting on my time to speak on this podcast. Support it and spread the word.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
Exactly, John. I've got to run a stern ship. It's what people expect.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear you.
All right, go ahead. Finish up.
Oh, thank you.
Stick the landing. Make it good.
Yes. Will you please post how people can contribute to the Mark Thompson
I don't
program?
need you to pitch. It's okay. Do you have some
more important than
wrap-up
that,
comment?
You guys pick up the phone, call your friends, email them. Let them know that there are effective methods and voices. And I can assure you, at least from my end, anytime I'm asked to speak, anytime I'm asked to appear on a radio program, anytime I'm asked to do something to make people aware, I will do it. I am relentless in my belief in that. And I want to express my gratitude to Mark Thompson and to the Mark Thompson program for allowing me this forum once a week with you right here on the Mark Thompson program.
John, you're very lucky that you're able to share the stage with a brilliant mind like myself. I just want to say.
Wait, I didn't go that far.
You can find John across the universe of internet. He has a podcast, he has writings, he has reflections. Again, Around the Political World with Jon Rothmann is his podcast. and it's a daily podcast. He boils it all down for you. TheVoiceSF.org is where you can find Jon Rothmann's work. TheVoiceSF.org. John,
Just
always
click
grateful.
the podcast button there. We talked about Mayor Lurie and how he's responding to all of this
Oh,
morning.
yeah, in San Francisco. Yeah, that's
So,
great. It's,
a lot of issues. But
that's
Mark,
great.
the only reason I'm
here is because you are a friend.
Yes, that's right. That's as Elon said it, John. We remain friends. All right, love having you in, pal.
Okay, talk to you soon.
The great Jon Rothmann, everyone. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, it's always great to have Johnny, as he was known to his dad. How about that? That's the breaking news. Jon Rothmann used to be called Johnny, Albert.
I wouldn't dare call our esteemed friend Jon Rothmann Johnny.
I don't know. I called him Johnny once, but I think it's not his brand, so I try to respect the brand. Suppose you can take his Voice of San Francisco off the screen. One of you.
Oh, my apologies.
One of you kids. Contribute without taking a chunk of the money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see. Contribute to YouTube. Well, if you don't want, yeah, YouTube does take a chunk of your donations. I always feel like it's worth it because they make the process so easy. But if you want to support the show and you don't want to have any chunk taken out, there's a way to do that. Send us an email, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com, and I'll send you back an address, and you can send a check along if you prefer. And there have been so many of you who have taken that option, and I really appreciate it. We really appreciate it. I don't want to sing the blues to you all the time about money. That's why I don't dwell on it a lot, but I will mention it. And it's really tough for independent media. And yes, thank you. That is the, I'll get to that in a second. The Trevor Starr's comment, and if I may just add, is what Jon Rothmann always, and if I just might add, and then he pivots to another, that's why I have to jerk him back on the conversation about what we're talking about. He's always pivoting to something else, and then when I jerk him back in, people go, how can you interrupt Jon Rothmann? How can I? It's my favorite thing to do, interrupting Jon Rothmann. I wouldn't even have him on the air if I couldn't interrupt him. I'm not a caller, okay? I'm not somebody who just called Jon Rothmann's radio show. It's my show. And he just keeps going. It goes, and I'd like to add, and then he'll throw in RFK Jr., and then he'll say, and I'd like to add, and then he'll show in some border thing, and I'd like to add the Supreme Court, I'd like to add the District Court. It's like, dude, let me go back and address what you're saying 4 topics ago. He's so good. He keeps going, so I have to shoehorn my way in. Anyway, thank you for supporting the show, and he's so positive about supporting the show. So please, if you feel the need, feel the urge, have the means, you can support us monthly, themarkthompsonshow.com. There are clicks through to Patreon and PayPal, and under all videos. There are click-throughs as well, and I just told you, you send me a note, send me an email, and I'll tell you how you can send a check. My favorite show of the week, Jon Rothmann on Wednesday, says Brian. Wow, look at that. Mm-hmm. John's got fans. Very, very cool. Very cool. Roth Dude, says Zero Sum. Yeah. Mark can do whatever he wants on Kim's show. Yeah. Kim's got a lot of fans. I don't want to mess with her. Her fans turn on me like rabid animals. It's scary. Yeah. Got to watch it. Speaking of Kim, I did want to get some news. I don't know if, Albert, do you have this for me? I wanted to show everyone something that is Trump related, but it's not policy related. It's kind of rumor and cheeky and weird related. It's about his concealed leg brace. Did you find it? You can, I sent it to you, and you'll find it.
Yes.
You do have it. Very good, sir. Thank you. So let me just mention, there is speculation over President Donald Trump's health. He was seen stumbling while boarding Air Force One. I thought that was kind of unfair to him. I mean, I try to be fair to him if I can. I think anybody could have stumbled up, a jillion stairs. They make you walk up for Air Force One. but he has an unusual bulge under his pant leg, which has now sparked theories that he may be wearing a concealed brace.
So if he is wearing a concealed brace, what would be wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it at all. But again,
I'm not one to defend Trump, but like sometimes people need a brace on their knee or whatever, right?
No, exactly. But the idea somehow that you can, in an environment where you're dumping on Joe Biden for being infirm, can't get out of bed, has to use the auto pen, you are concealing the braces that you need after you underwent nearly 5 hours of medical evaluation at Walter Reed, and you, again, through spokespeople, Trump's physician, Captain Sean Barbabella, said Trump is in excellent cognitive and physical health. Again, I've got no issue with it.
Right.
But he said, I've got the highest mark, good heart, good soul, very good soul. I don't know what, that's a quote. I don't know. I didn't know they test for soul. But I've never seen anything like it. So all I would say is that in this world where you're making so much of concealing any kind of physical infirmity or issue, and that's why this takes on additional oxygen. Once again, I don't care about this stuff, but I don't care about the Biden thing. I really didn't. They're administering to the country and doing things that essentially I feel are laudable. I think they're the Biden people. And if you want to tell me, Biden, oh man, he was like, he's on sedatives and lying in the Lincoln bedroom. All right, fine. Well, whoever is running things is doing a better job than this crew. I'll take Biden on a hospital gurney before I take this crew. They dismantle government. They fire tens of thousands of federal workers. The federal government's in a free fall. Social Security recipients are worried about getting their checks. There's no EPA regulation on the tonnage of pollutants in the air, in the water, in the soil. Now you just had the dismissal of everybody on that vaccine board, even as increasing threats of pandemics rise. Now an immigration policy which looks to be overstepping states' rights, involving the National Guard, the U.S. Marines, and the U.S. military across the country. These are all things we should have no stomach for. Great. Trump can meet with the press and make a bunch of pronouncements and statements. He's all there, and Joe Biden was barely intelligible sometime. Fine. I'll take barely intelligible and competent over the absolute amateur hour circus that is going on in Washington right. Kristi Noem, before she got to Washington, she's running the biggest organization in Washington, DHS, Department of Homeland Security. She couldn't find the ladies' room in Washington before she got there. Pete Hegseth is running the Pentagon. He's a weekend host on Fox and Friends. Incompetence is everywhere, and overreach is everywhere. And Stephen Miller, Trump's lead henchman, now that Elon Musk is gone, he pursues a policy of cruelty and of aggression that no one should be good with. So, again, I'll give Trump a pass on these braces that he's wearing. Again, it doesn't matter to me, but you guys are making such a big deal out of Biden and some hidden medical condition, cognitive thing, whatever. I mean, I don't know what Trump's state of mind is. I always hear that, he's showing signs of dementia. I don't know, honestly. I'm not on that bandwagon necessarily. I try to be fair to the facts. But I do know what his policies are and his impulses are, and they're way out of bounds. So go ahead and wear your braces or whatever. But the idea somehow that you can let all the horses out of the barn this way, create chaos in America, and then rise as a strong man and say, hey, I'm here to fix it. You're going to have to give up some rights, but we're going to get this country back. It's a pretty sad state. All right, smash the like button like a boss.
Smash
If you
it with your iron
even
rod.
if you don't like me, smash the like button.
Smash
At
it
least
with your iron rod.
in fact, if you don't, I really want to hear from you. Murphy says, yeah, it's a big deal because if it was Biden, MAGA would lose their minds. Fox Entertainment hosts' heads would explode. Of course, that's true.
That's true.
Of course. Trump is reaching the age of deterioration, says D.L. Wong. I got to tell you something. I like the name D.L. Wong. I feel like if I could change my name, I'd like D.L. Wong as my name. It just has a... Who's got... It's got a... There's a... I know this isn't going to land. I'm into names. Very few other people are. But it's got like a... It's almost got a showbiz aspect to it. D.L. Wong says Trump is reaching the age of deterioration, arthritis, losing his bones, as well as his brains. Hey, watch it, D.L. Wong. Okay, a lot of us are. A lot of us are reaching that age. How dare you?
Yeah, but you're not trying to rule the free world and make it not so free.
He is repeating over and over again, which means he is either suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. I agree, D.L. Wong. It's likely true that this older man is suffering from those things that older people suffer from. That's something. D.L. Wong sounds like the name of an author. I agree, Sandy.
Yeah.
There's a director named Wong Kar-wai. I like that name too, Wong Kar-wai. It's a very kind of poetic rhythm to the name. But again, I'm into names and very few other people are. It's my own indulgence. Sorry to have to share it. Karen D says Trump's mind is twerking. So was Musk's, but that was caused by ketamine. Yeah. Just because you mentioned the Musk thing, Musk has really backed off. I mean, again, I talked about this right after, you remember this, Kim, right after this whole feud began and Musk and Trump broke up. I talked about the changing nature of the leverage that they both had.
Yeah.
On the one hand, the leverage was all Musk's prior to the election. Musk had the money. Musk had the social media platform. Musk was critical to Trump. After Trump becomes president, Trump has the power to grant more government contracts to Musk, to take away government contracts from Musk, to give Musk the keys to the kingdom, to scrape all the government databases of our information. That's all Trump, his leverage. So now that there's been a breakup, it's kind of no wonder that Musk is sliding back toward the president. Well, I might have said some things I regret. That's the latest in the nature of their relationship now. Vicky in Sausalito with a $20 super chat says, Mark, this is the part of the movie in which the hero's back is to the wall. But we will, she says in capital letters, prevail ultimately. I hope so. I hope so. There's a lot of damage being done right now. You know, these are real people on the other end of some of this political theater, and that's concerning. Mark, can we just hand you an unmarked envelope with untraceable bills to avoid the tariffs and fees when we donate? Luis says, yeah, LOL. Right, then nobody could take a piece? Sure. Yeah, we should have an in-person meetup where we all, where everybody can, put money in the basket like they do in church. And that's what's going on there, right? I'm sure they're counting all that church money and declaring, oh, that's right, they don't pay any taxes on it anyway. So there you go. Don't have to declare it. Did Trump pay these protesters, says Jim Eaton. There is that conspiracy theory that the right pays these agitators. I don't know about that. I do believe that these agitators are from outside the movement, outside the immigration movement. So I'm of that view. I'm pretty comfortable with that view, but I don't know who pays them. Chaplain, I'm just being honest. I mean, people can say, hey, I know they're paid by the right, they're paid by the left, whatever. Yeah, okay. I mean, maybe, but I don't see the real evidence of it so far. But I'm open. Please send them. Chaplain Fred with a $10 super chat says, Mark, what's your take on Kristi Noem, whatever her last name is, saying flat out that Mexico's president is supporting the riots? Just what Trump wants to use against Mexico. I'm so furious. Yeah, I think smack talking your neighbors is a real problem. I think smack talking Canada was a problem. I think smack talking Mexico is a problem. It's a political winner, because it's seen as tough. We don't take any BS from any other world leader. But anyone who really knows sees how it's a complete mistake to take on other world leaders, your neighbors to the south. You do a tremendous amount of trade with them. You really want to take on the president that way? Now, to the specifics. I don't know what the Mexican president said. Maybe Kim does, if you can find something. But she may have spoken on behalf of those Latinos who are definitely being targeted by all this. I mean, I think it, on some level, appropriate. Again, I don't know what she said, but to say it's sad to see the Latino community in America, so much a vibrant part of supporting America and America's success, being targeted this way. Those are my words. I don't know what she said, but Kristi Noem, she's vacuous. She knows nothing. So she just knows how to salute, how to produce those videos and those radio commercials suggesting how tough the new administration is on immigration. But I think otherwise, I view her sadly as someone another incompetent who's in a position of immense power. She's truly scary. A West Theory with a $5 super chat. Yeah, there is Kristi Noem. Again, it's bizarre. These are media grandstanders, and Kristi Noem is one of them. So, Kim's news and more. There's environmental stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot going on that, again, it takes oxygen away from some of these stories when so much is going on in Los Angeles. Tom says vacuous is a ding word. Yeah, I suppose that is true. Yeah. Thank you, Tom, as the keeper of the ding. I did want to comment on ABC firing Terry Moran.
Yeah.
There you are, CC Ryder. ABC fired Terry Moran, shaking my head. Albert, did you find that video that I wanted of Trump and Moran? As Moran was with Donald Trump in the Oval Office, Donald Trump was showing Moran the Oval Office and kind of showing him the ways in which he changed the Oval Office, improvements he's made of the Oval Office, how he's augmented it. And he didn't just show him the gold, which is now all over, but he showed him the Declaration of Independence behind a curtain. Now, I'll just state as an aside, I'm sure that's not the real Declaration of Independence. I mean, they didn't move the Declaration of Independence from the archives into the Oval Office. I just don't believe they did that. Now, they may have, but the Declaration of Independence I saw in the Oval was less distressed looking than the actual Declaration of Independence, which I've seen multiple times, I think, in the in the museum. But even that, as I'm thinking, that might be one of three. You can find this, Kim. The actual Declaration of Independence, I want to say that there might be three of them, and so perhaps Trump has one of them. But that also might be something I just saw in a Nick Cage movie. I don't know.
Maybe he should read it. Wouldn't that be nice? If he's got one in his possession, he should be able to look at it from time to time.
Entire Fulbright board quits over Trump's aides illegally interfering. Wow, that is wild.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you'll have. This is a prestigious program. My mother, a Fulbright scholar.
That's amazing. She must have been, or she is quite bright.
Oh, she's super bright. But
the Fulbright board told the State Department it had no right to cancel scholarships for nearly 200 American students. They're not pleased and they quit in protest.
Yeah, there it is. I mean, a dozen board members from this prestigious program. They're concerned that political appointees at the State Department manages the Fulbright program, are acting illegally by canceling the awarding of Fulbright scholarships to almost 200 American professors and researchers who are prepared to go to universities and other research institutions overseas starting this summer. The board approved those scholars over the winter after a year-long selection process. The State Department was supposed to send acceptance letters by April, but instead the board learned that the Office of Public Diplomacy at the agency had been sending rejection letters to the scholars based mainly on their research topics. In addition, the department is reviewing the application of about 1,200 scholars from other countries who've already been approved by the board to come to the U.S. Those foreign scholars were supposed to receive acceptance letters around April, and they still have not. The board is also concerned that the budget that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is asking Congress for in the next fiscal year cuts spending for the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, which includes the Fulbright program. It's a $691 million ask cut to $50 million. State Department not responding to inquiries. They are trying to get academic institutions to fold to the ideological beliefs of the hard right. And this is all part of the game. I mean, many fired already those whose political views didn't conform with the hard right. So with Rubio on board with Trump in a big way. I mean, people used to talk about Marco Rubio like he's the adult in the room, to use the phrase. But he's the adult in the room who is who's saluting the king. He is ready to play ball like no one anticipated he would be. He knows better, but has political aspirations, and they're all being realized, it would seem, or on track because of what he's doing. But thank you for that. All right, Kim's News, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Auntie, President Trump says he wants to liberate Los Angeles amid anti-ICE protests. While speaking at North Carolina's Fort Bragg yesterday, Trump said the demonstrations prove the once beautiful city is turned into a trash heap. He called the protests violent and thanked the National Guard and the Marines who are being deployed to that city. Those anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles are being called also un-American by the White House. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said California is being led by Democrat radicals, she said, who are letting the violence and destruction continue. She said President Trump will never allow mob rule, and he won't allow mass deportation efforts to be deterred by left-wing radicals. An overnight curfew is expected to remain in effect in Los Angeles. After several days of violent protests, the curfew applies to 1 square mile, including the Civic Center, Chinatown, Skid Row, and areas where looting has occurred. Mayor Karen Bass says those who don't work or live in that area will be arrested and prosecuted. Work travel through the area and credentialed media are allowed as well. The curfew 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Meanwhile, it's not just Los Angeles. Anti-ICE protests are expected across the country today. Protests have broken out in New York and Chicago, where thousands demonstrated downtown Tuesday, as well as in Denver and Washington, D.C. In the San Francisco Bay Area, concerns over ICE agent movements continue. Protesters yesterday rallying against federal agents outside an immigration courthouse in Concord. ICE officials arrested and removed 4 immigrants right after their hearings in court Tuesday, which incensed the demonstrators there. A trade deal between the United States and China apparently reached in London. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick telling reporters after yesterday's meeting the two sides have reached a framework to implement a Geneva trade. President Trump says China will supply rare earth minerals up front to the United States as part of it, and the U.S. will make certain concessions in return. Inflation rose less than expected last month. Numbers out this morning from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show the cost of goods and services up 0.1% over the previous month, putting the annual rate of inflation at 2.4%. Economists had predicted an increase of 0.2%. Elon Musk offering something of an olive branch to President Trump, kind of making good on Mark Thompson's prediction of a getting back together. Musk
Yeah.
now says some of the posts he made last week about Trump went too far. Which ones? The SpaceX billionaire got in a war of words with the president.
When he said he was on
social
Epstein's
media.
plane, is that
Oh,
one?
is that the
or was
one?
it the impeach him now?
Oh.
He's corrupt.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
don't know. He really did. He got on a blast. I don't know if it was drug induced or what, but he really started blasting.
I've gone too far. A jury has reached verdicts in some counts of the sex crimes retrial of Harvey Weinstein in New York City. The former Hollywood producer found guilty of engaging in a criminal sex act with one woman while being acquitted on another count involving a different woman. A verdict was not reached on whether Weinstein attacked a third woman. The Trump administration is revoking limits on power plants' climate pollution. This proposal made by the EPA would allow thousands of existing and future facilities burning coal or natural gas from having to follow regulations that lower their output of carbon dioxide pollution.
This is what I talk about. I mean, it's despicable, the polluting of America. It's an uphill climb already, and this is scary.
As mentioned at the top of the show, Brian Wilson's died at the age of 82. The Beach Boys founder is considered one of the most innovative songwriters of the 20th century. His family made the announcement on his website, and so far, no further details about his death have been provided. There is a woman north of San Francisco suing Costco after a liquor display fell on her at a store in Santa Rosa. Sadie Novotny suing Costco in April. The case just moved to a San Francisco courtroom last week. She claims Costco is guilty of negligence, saying workers should have known the liquor cabinet at the store was not sturdy and could fall. Her lawsuit alleges she suffered multiple permanent and severe injuries, including, but not limited to, a closed head injury and traumatic brain injury. A Florida man facing up to 30 years in prison for pretending to be a flight attendant to book free airline flights.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
The Justice Department, yeah.
Did it work for a while? How long did it work?
The Justice Department said Tuesday Tyron Alexander was convicted of wire fraud and unlawfully entering a secure airport under false pretenses. Prosecutors say Alexander pretended to be a flight attendant, providing fake badge numbers and hire dates through 7 different airlines. Before he was caught, Alexander managed to book more than 120 free flights.
Wow.
Come on.
That is insane. Man, I'd say he got his money's worth for his illegality,
He's going to be sentenced in August, so I don't know if it was worth the free flights.
And this is their new hoax.
Wow, that's a hoax that worked for a while.
And we have a new dinosaur as well. A new dinosaur species related to the Tyrannosaurus Rex has been discovered by paleontologists. It is called the Conhulu mojalensis, and it was discovered after recent analysis by researchers, and they found the fossils in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia in the 1970s. This new species, described as the Prince of Dragons, lived about 86 million years ago and is considered a transitional form between smaller tyrannosaurs and the massive T-Rex. Its discovery filling a crucial gap in the tyrannosaur family tree, helping scientists understand the evolution of these massive predators.
The science is ridiculous.
I don't know. It sounds exciting.
The study published in the journal Nature on the new Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Now, in the new budget, I'm sure the Trump administration, because they embrace, science fiction and conspiracy, and I'm sure they want to bring a lot of these dinosaurs back to life. That's probably an exciting. It's almost Muskian kind of in the sci-fi thing.
Only so they can sick them on predator
that's
on
right. They can train
deportees
them.
and immigrants, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we'll just send the T-Rex after them.
Maybe it's the libs that are doing that. It's tough. You never know.
Yeah.
The libs or the right. Somebody's working on that. Somebody's got a Bunsen burner fired up to get those dinosaurs back in action.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is the best coffee and the best tea and really the best company as well. all organic. They fund women-owned farms. Ooh, the Father's Day special. I love the big cup. Yeah, that's what I want. If I was a father, Mark, I might really enjoy the Father's Day special from CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
I agree. I mean, there's you get all of that in this Father's Day special package, and you get free shipping. And do put in your discount code, so you're getting it discounted. You can see that on the splash page, but everybody watching and listening, you can order and get 10% off that. So again, Mark T at checkout at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com for 10% off that and anything else you order. Teas, spices, merch, anything. They're pretty great. And I saw a here it is. Chaplain Fred saying, "Hi, Mark. I'm not able to get my Father's Day discount. Get it? Because he's a father already." Chaplain Fred.
Yeah.
That's why. That's funny.
Yeah.
But there is a Father's Day special at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and do use Mark T to drink in the benefits.
I like how you did that. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
It's unbelievably offensive.
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
Hey Mark, it's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
That's pure speculation. There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
Morning.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
Can you let him finish, sir?
You cannot say you love your country.
That was very inappropriate.
Don't talk to me that way.
What do you think I'm going to say to you?
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Great to have everybody here. We are a live show. We were born out of a radio show in San Francisco. Kim was the news person. Albert was the producer. We came over here. We are on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio as an audio podcast. Please subscribe and join our community of contributors. It's such a great, robust group of very smart people who join us on this show. I'm talking about our listeners and viewers. So I wanted to just spend an instant on Elon Musk, because something interesting has happened now, with the fallout on so many different fronts. There are many, and I include among the many Elizabeth Warren, who feel as though there may be a national security issue here. I mean, you gave Elon Musk access to all of these things, and then there's a falling out, and we know that he and his little Muskettes were in all of those different agencies, and they scraped those agencies for data on many Americans. We really don't know what happened with that. And
Kinda
so
like when you give your ex-boyfriend the key to your house, and then you got to get it back after the breakup.
Thank you. That's not a bad parallel. So Senator Elizabeth Warren is asking Secretary of State Marco Rubio for information on the contingency plans if billionaire Elon Musk breaches his company's current contracts with the U.S. In an effort to try to take back some of that leverage that I've talked about. Musk threatens, "I'll break this deal that I have." There are data deals with Starlink, with his rocket company. In a letter to Rubio, as acting national security advisor and obtained by news media, Warren said that Donald Trump and Musk's public disagreements about the upcoming reconciliation bill that escalated into a public online spat could, quote, have serious implications for U.S. national security. The Massachusetts Democrat mentioned that Mr. Trump's proposal to terminate Musk's government contracts and subsidies could possibly be met with Musk himself decommissioning the Dragon spacecraft. No petty social media fight between the president and billionaire should jeopardize U.S. national security, she said. In addition to contingency plans for SpaceX, the senator asked for information around the impact on U.S. agencies' satellite communications if Musk's Starlink is turned off. This is what I was speaking about. She asked Rubio to provide any analysis that the Trump administration has conducted of its authorities and options under the Defense Production Act to address vendor lock monopolies or contractor refusal to meet national security needs. You see here how there has to be competence. So this is a lawmaker asking for a competent appraisal, a competent summary of what this administration really has when it comes to national security. Okay, you fire the national security advisor for being on that insecure platform. Remember the Signal chat? All right, so now you, Marco Rubio, are in charge of this. There are real national security issues here. This isn't just some back and forth between the president and his pal Musk, who got him into the presidency in some ways. And again, I've said it before, Trump might have become president anyway. He was a transformational political figure back when he beat Hillary Clinton, and he continues to be. But Musk was a big part of things, and he was given the keys to the kingdom. The data kingdom, the governmental kingdom. He was able to dismantle all of these agencies that had regulatory business with him. And so now he has that data because the data kingdom he scraped. More to the point, what if he takes his ball and goes home? Elon Musk has a lot of power. These government contracts are critical to national security. And Elizabeth Warren saying, hey, I'm sure you guys, Marco Rubio, you and the great Trump administration caring so much about national security, you've made a plan, right? What is that plan? Yeah, crickets. And so it is, as we look at what's happening in America, you see how politics can get way out ahead of competence. And when you have as many incompetents in charge as we do, things get scary. I guess I want to get to, can I do it, Albert? Can I quickly get to, it's the planet, stupid? We have real environmental news. Let me do it. We don't have Belinda today, but I will give you a little bit of what's going on in the world of the environment. We do it in a segment we call It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet, stupid. No. It's the planet, stupid.
Is the planet stupid, and it is the planet stupid. I'll start with California's electric vehicle rules. President Trump plans to sign a trio of resolutions tomorrow to revoke California's nation-leading vehicle emission standards. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, the Republican from West Virginia, author of the resolution to nix California's electric vehicle sales mandate via the Congressional Review Act, and Representative Kevin Kiley, also a Republican in California, confirming that the White House has scheduled the signings at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Trump's signature will finalize his administration's months-long effort to thwart California's authority to set stricter electrification rules for passenger vehicles and commercial trucks, along with higher standards for heavy-duty diesel engines. Republican lawmakers promised to quickly roll back the Biden-era EPA waivers that gave California the power to enforce its rules. Administrator Lee Zeldin announcing that his agency had put them into review. That was in February. And then the Senate sign-off on this maneuver stretched until last month. And so it will be. Trump's EPA revoked an earlier version of California's vehicle emissions rules through an 18-month regulatory process during his first term. California Attorney General Rob Bonta is promising a legal fight over all of this.
So we elect people in California that will give us the clean air and the clean water that we're looking for, that we want. And the federal government says, nope, you don't get the clean water and you don't get the clean air that you want.
Yeah. I think that's exactly exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm a tree hugger, so for me, it's a really dark day.
I love Tesla.
Yeah, he was out in front of the White House
Not
pitching
anymore.
electric vehicles, within the last month. Not anymore. He wants to sell the Tesla or get rid of it.
He says he's going to sell his Tesla, I guess, because,
sure.
Musk made it.
I guess you won't see the Tesla in the parade that's coming up this weekend. Trump's EPA is to claim power plant emissions are, quote, not significant. But studies say otherwise. U.S. power sector would be the world's 6th largest emitter of planet-heating greenhouse gases if it were a country. If it were a country, the U.S. power sector alone would be the 6th largest emitter of planet-heating greenhouse gases. But Trump's administration is set to claim that all of this pollution spewing from U.S. power plants is so globally insignificant it should be spared any sort of climate regulation. I leave the greenhouse gases out. I do. Mark Thompson does. Because I think the greenhouse gas conversation doesn't penetrate all the greenhouse gases. You get in a whole conversation about greenhouse gases and warming. I'm just talking about pollutants. Why wouldn't you want to restrict the tonnage of pollutants that are discharged into the air? It seems to me to be smart. You want your kids and your grandkids breathing air that's progressively more polluted every month?
No.
I mean, there are serious health repercussions, emphysema, and any number of cardiorespiratory issues that result from breathing in all of these pollutants. Trump's Environmental Protection Agency has reportedly drafted a plan to delete all restrictions on these gases coming from coal and gas-fired power plants in the U.S. because they, quote, do not contribute significantly to dangerous pollution.
I wonder how much they paid for that. I wonder how much the coal and the gas companies and the power producers, how much did they pay for that regulation to be stripped away?
I think you have in the GOP, sadly, a party that is all too willing to do the heavy lifting for the dirtiest energy you can possibly imagine. So this is an awful, awful thing. And it comes, as I say, on the heels of rolling back the regulations on California's EV vehicles and the mandates that are associated. That is to say, the incentives that are built into California law. So you have rollback on pollution. And again, you have this, in my judgment, wildly misguided plan to take away any incentives for EV vehicles. And on to AI. AI data centers could drive a new wave of air pollution in Texas. The boom in artificial intelligence power that is required to drive it is so very significant that there may be a corresponding pollution from new gas power plants that is going to affect Texas.
Yeah, they have
State regulators are considering proposals for more than 100 new gas power projects, the vast majority of them entirely new plants to power a new wave of data centers for AI. More than 30 have already been permitted. It's a rubber stamp, apparently. To meet the increasing demand for electricity, Texas should be encouraging more clean energy instead of feeding public subsidies to dirty fossil fuels, said the executive director of the Environmental Integrity Project. The plants are spread across the state, but cluster around Houston. The I-35 corridor between Austin and San Antonio also has a lot, and the oil fields of West Texas will have them as well. If they are all built, they could produce as much pollution each year as another 27 million new cars and trucks. It's like doubling Texas's current motor vehicle fleet. Oil and gas pollution, I'll just remind you, includes volatile organic carcinogens, benzene, asthma-triggering compounds, ozone, nitrogen oxides, lung-burrowing particles, as noted here, like PM 2.5. I mean, these names and these chemicals, they don't need to mean anything to you. They're just all really bad. And so, again, I view this as really being led astray. And Americans, I think, don't even get this information because right now all eyes are on California and Texas and places where the National Guard is showing up and the smack talking between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And what is happening in the environment is immoral. And it completely goes orphaned, essentially, by the media because, to be fair to the media, the shiny object show is a serious one as well. That's It's the Planet Stupid for today.
More It's the Planet Stupid.
No, it's the Planet Stupid.
Next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show. Yeah, I just get, that's really, I know you can label people, this guy's a lib, this guy's a lefty, this guy's a righty, this guy's a,
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah, exactly. This guy's a commie, this guy's a Marxist. I heard a guy on the radio yesterday, he's running for governor in California. And he called all the protesters he said they don't love this country. They're a bunch of communists and Marxists. I'm thinking,
what?
Do you even know what you're saying? Or are these just labels? Communists and Marxists? He said they don't love capitalism. They don't like capitalism is what he said. They're a bunch of communists and Marxists. And I thought, you're running for governor? But you know what? Maybe that BS actually works for a bunch of people. Yeah, they don't love capitalism. The whole reason they come here is to work.
Capitalism, right.
It's capitalism.
To make money, to send it back to their home area, right?
It's all about capitalism, dude. In fact, they're looking to create industries. That's why that guy's selling fruit on the corner, making tacos in the street. That's capitalism.
Yeah.
He's not looking to work for the government. The other thing I'll just say in closing, because I know we're running late today, is that on this immigration issue, immigrants in California contribute tens of millions of dollars to the California economy. They pay taxes. They're a key part of the California economy. And by extension, they're a key part of the American economy. And I get it. This is a jihad against all of these Latinos, etc. But you're going to find something by going against them and rounding them up at Home Depot, at their prescribed legal hearing date. You're going to find that you're losing key members of the society. Now, I don't think the Trump administration cares, but Californians are going to care, and Americans, fair-minded Americans, are going to care. And you'll find this in Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and so on. And if you go into New York City or Florida, you're going to find there can be damage done there as well. So all I'm suggesting is that they're an integral part of a lot that is good about America. And there are very few people who felt, if you really asked them about immigration, that they wanted you to go against the immigrants who are at Home Depot or go on the fashion district and sweep these areas. No, they wanted you to get rid of what you were talking about, Mr. President. You were talking about violent criminals. They come here, they have violent criminal records. They come out of an insane asylum. All that stuff you said. But that's not what you're doing. Stephen Miller is just going, I just want you to get any immigrant. Get anybody who might be here illegally. And if they don't have proof that they have legal status, I want to put them on a plane. I want to put them on a bus. I want to detain them. It's a brutal, brutal policy, but the realities of what it will do are even more brutal. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So, all right, I need to take care of some outstanding comments, maybe. We need to have some tea, says Spencer Jeff.
Take a little step, you know.
Yeah. Have some tea. Thank you, West Theory, for the super sticker, $5 super sticker into the chat today in the super sticker world. Help Me Rhonda, of course. Brian Wilson came up with Help Me Rhonda. Albert remembered Help Me Rhonda once he was reminded. Mark, would you wave your scepter of equity and mercy over Trevor, who has provided outstanding drops, among other things, says Karen Cooper with a $5.
Doesn't he already have a...
Well, I mean, it never hurts to get a booster shot of the
rod of equity and mercy.
of the rod of equity and mercy.
Well, in
so
that case,
I have
I'll
to
take
get into a
booster.
trance. This is
Like
very
it,
tough,
you know.
because you don't understand the physical and emotional drain it is on me to, no one cares about me. This is the problem.
Do you know who I am?
I know. I'm
kind of a big deal.
Here
I'm
we
fragile.
go again.
The emotional and physical drain, it's significant. But I will try, if I can get into, let me try to get into it. Albert, please, hang on a second. Stop. Albert, please, I can see you moving, and it really does disturb my trance. I can't, you're not getting it, Albert. This is a sensitive thing that I'm doing. And you think it's some kind of joke, and so you make all of these gestures. I see what you're doing.
Why are you yelling?
All right.
Yeah,
please, Albert, if you would, have some respect for the process. All right. Prepare to receive. Albert, stop. Albert, I can still see you moving around. You know what? I'm sorry. Trevor, I'm going to do this tomorrow. Albert is not getting, I'm going to speak with him afterward.
I'm sorry.
I am just, I don't get it. I mean, it shouldn't be this difficult.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
I'm going to bestow the rod of equity and mercy.
And I'm trying to be a better person.
On Trevor. I accept your apology. I just feel as though...
John, I'd like to ask for a recess.
Yeah, I think we should recess till tomorrow. I can't begin the process of the trance and then stop and then begin it again and stop. It takes too much out of me, Kim. You understand.
I just didn't realize you were so sensitive.
Maybe you don't get it either. It's not.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
It's not my sensitivity. It's the amount that it would. You could never do this, for example. Never. You could never do it. You don't have the emotional and physical. What am I trying to say, Albert? What is that?
Like a toll on your body, how much you're sacrificing.
The toll it takes. The Constitution is the word I'm looking for. You don't have the Constitution for it. I don't know. It's all right. We'll get to it tomorrow, and
that's pure speculation.
I think that you're right. Maybe Kim does have the power. The Mark Thompson Show. Before we even start the show, I want to reiterate again: we really need to have moderators or two for the chat. Help is needed to deal with ugliness that you guys are often too busy for. Do you want to comment on that, Kim? The chat moderation is kind of your thing.
Yeah, we got attacked by bots that were trying to sell crypto. So we had to deal with that one. And we do the best we can to really watch the chat. But there are some times where Albert's pulling up video, or maybe I'm, checking on news stories, and one slips past. And yesterday that happened. So we're sorry, but we think we do a pretty good job trying to monitor it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're saying...
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
You did kind of say I'm sorry already.
Well, do we want to hire someone to specifically watch the chat, eagle eye on the chat?
If we can pay them on the 5th of never, I'd love to hire them.
I think so. Normal live streams have, or all live streams like on Twitch, and I think on YouTube also have just chat moderators. So if you're interested, we could just maybe some of our loyal listeners could just help us moderate the chat. Kind of like
I got an email from somebody who said meaning his comments are not showing up. They're being like 30% of his comments are showing up, 70% are not. We have no control over that. I mean, we have control, but we don't do that. We just don't. There is AI moderation of our chat, and that's what you're noticing. So if you call somebody a name or you say something that the YouTube AI moderator out of bounds, they're the ones that are flagging your comment. So sometimes if I have a minute, I'll go back through the live show to see what people are saying, and I can see how AI has suppressed certain comments, and I'll try to unsuppress them. But it's a lot of comments, as you might imagine. So, but that's what's going on. Actual trolls are the problem, says Heather. Well, we'll try to watch for them. Again, Kim has a lot to do, and so I think she does a pretty good job in general. But
if you'd like to be a moderator, then please email us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com.
Yeah,
and we'll sign you up.
It is one way that you could have an effect on this wonderful show. All right, if you'll make a note, Albert, we have to give the Rod of Equity and Mercy to Trevor in Hollywood, California, because we couldn't quite get that finished today.
I'm sorry. I'll just, I only have 2 hours in me to stay focused. Yeah. So, yeah, we're a little over that.
PT says, Mark, you previously bestowed the Rod of Equity to your entire audience and said no boosters were ever necessary. Well, I must tell you that was early in my Rod of Equity and Mercy education. And apparently there is a diminution of power and of the cloak of protection that the Rod of Equity and Mercy provides. So it's a booster is not a bad idea, and diminution is a ding word. So, so glad to find you, Mark, Mr. Voice. And who said Trump can read? Okay, all right, thank you, Adrienne.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you, Kathy Crowell. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
And we love you back. Luis, thank you. Kim does the after party live next, and until tomorrow, bye-bye.
Thank you.